All right, welcome to the Puzzle of Us podcast. I'm your host, Chelsea Petersen, and on the Puzzle of Us podcast, we are helping you put the broken pieces of marriage, love, and life back together again to feel whole. Today, I'm super excited to have Justin on my podcast. Justin Gordon is a licensed marriage and family therapist who owns a private practice and works out of private practice out of his home in St. George. He sees all virtual clients, but he specializes in anxiety and trauma, and particularly religious trauma. And so I know, particularly anyone who's listening in the Cache Valley area, that's kind of a hot topic up here, and as is, I think, in a lot of the state of Utah or Western United States, at least right now. So you could reach out to Justin and he could help you out virtually. So a little bit more on Justin. He is in a remarriage. His wife was married previously, and so he does have a couple of stepkids and is making the blended family thing work. And he also has a couple kiddos of his own. So we are super excited to not only bring, what's that?
So 3 and 3. That's 6 total, not 4.
Yeah, 6 kids total, guys. Like he deserves some sort of badge or something, because he's definitely doing parenthood. That is for sure. 6
That's right.
kids.
Yeah. Let's give credit where credit's due.
Yeah, absolutely. So he does, he has a lot of expertise in his own life, as well as private practice and just his experience being a marriage and family therapist. And we're going to talk today. Our topic today is fostering emotional intelligence in our relationship. So before we dive in, Justin, anything else you want to kind of add about yourself or your experience or your practice, or anything you want to kind of say about that?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. Mostly focus on anxiety and trauma, and specifically religious trauma from faith transitions and things like that. Everything I do is virtual through Zoom. For some people, that's exactly what they want. Other people, it's exactly what they don't want. Some people could go either way. But for the people for whom it works, it has been a really convenient way, and it's been just as effective as when I used to do things in person.
Yeah, perfect. Justin and I we were colleagues, and we went to school together in our master's program. And so Justin and I go back a long ways, and it's been great to see his just transition and evolution through therapy from all those many years ago that we spent a lot of time together in the clinic.
Trenches. So. Yeah, in the trenches together. Yeah.
Yes. We started in the trenches. We're still in the trenches together, just a little further apart now, as far as geographic location goes.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, cool. Well, I reached out to Justin to do this podcast with me, just because, again, he has a lot of background in trauma and just anxiety, and just the emotional intelligence, not only from his personal life of how to make it work with 6 kids in his house, but also with his spouse. And just I know him to be a very emotionally intelligent person from my own experience. So I reached out to him to have him help us out with this podcast today. So thanks so much for joining us today, Justin. So first of all, when we say emotional intelligence, what does that mean?
Well, I think of it just like intellectual intelligence. It's knowing a lot about emotions, recognizing them in yourself, recognizing them in other people, being able to work through your own to a degree, being able to express your own to other people, having a good overall understanding of what it is, what emotions are, and what it is to have emotions.
Yeah. I agree with you more. I wouldn't even add anything to that. Just knowing that my emotional state and being able to be aware of that. And particularly what I want to kind of pick your brain on is how do we really do that in our relationships, right? Of how do we show up and be more aware of ourselves, help our partner be more aware. Again, as far as relationships go, and a lot of what I see with couples in couples therapy, and maybe from the anxiety side or the trauma side of things, maybe you see this differently, but when people show up in a distressed way in their relationship, oftentimes their partner doesn't know how to handle it, or they don't know how to ask for what they need from their partner. And so then it usually ends up causing that conflict. Do you see anything different? Is there anything different that you see kind of from your perspective and what you deal with in your clinic?
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. A lot of what happens is, like you say, they come in, they have emotions, and their spouse has emotions. And if you haven't honed in the practice of being emotionally intelligent, understanding your own emotions, understanding your spouse's emotions, your own emotions become all consuming, and it becomes all you can see. You're stuck in fight or flight. You get very narrow-minded. You need to win almost at all costs. Your primitive biology is telling you you need to survive at almost all costs. You get very trapped into yourself, into that emotion, without being able to step out of that emotion and sort of process it from a more logical perspective. And then going a huge step further, being able to do that same thing for your spouse in real time becomes very complicated.
Yeah, it really does. And I like what you said was you get your fight or flight response comes on, right? And I think of people like putting blinders on or like getting some sort of like really focused, right? And not being able to see anything but that one thing. And so then they become so sort of, I mean, you can get obsessive about things, you have obtrusive thoughts, you have just like all sorts of things just happen that it's like, I can't get out of this space.
Oh yeah, stuck.
Um,
Yeah.
you're very, very stuck. And then when you add a partner who also is maybe in that emotional distressed place as well, it
Yeah.
definitely can, the fire can get lit, right? Um,
Can and does.
so I think too, like one of the things that I see as being one of the most important things to being emotionally intelligent is the self-awareness part of things. And like, how do you see people being more self-aware? How does one become more self-aware of just like their emotional experiences?
Right. Yeah, that is the $1 million question, right? That very much depends. So many different answers to this one.
Mhm.
One of the biggest ways to look at it is it's like anything else, it's a skill to be developed. It's an ongoing skill to be learned and practiced and constantly fine-tuned. It's not something that comes quickly. It's something that you sort of commit to and realize it's going to take a while. Very much worth it, but it's going to take a while. You start developing skills of being introspective, looking into yourself to kind of get a sense for what's going on in there. And then as you start to get a sense of what's going on inside, then like you say, you take those blinders and you widen them out and you go, okay, if I'm feeling some of these things, my spouse must be feeling some of those as well, right? And if this is what I need to help me deal with my own emotions, hey, this is probably what my spouse needs as well to deal with his or her emotions. And then you start practicing that skill as well. Like, hey, how can I help my spouse with his or her emotions? And then going a step further, you start to learn, okay, how can I help my spouse with his or her emotions in real time while I'm dealing with my own heavy set of emotions?
Yeah, yeah, and it's to me one of the biggest barriers for the self-awareness for that is people's upbringings. A lot of times their childhood, we just don't get a lot of experience. I feel like today, like the education system is trying to do a little bit better job of educating emotional intelligence, but there's a
Yeah,
lot of a lot of that we just don't get in our childhood. We don't get the real time, as you say, like, okay, we might know, okay, what does anger feel like, but what does anger feel like right now for me, and how do I respond to that?
right.
Even doesn't always happen. And so I think that's, for me, I think that's what I see as being one of the biggest barriers to self-awareness. But everything you
Oh
said,
yeah.
like just being able to slow it down and commit to it. And it is a commitment. Um, as you were
Right.
talking, it made me think about like learning a language, right? Like
Oh,
being self-aware and being emotionally intelligent and being aware of that. Often I think of it as like learning to ride a bike, learning a new skill, learning something. And if you just do it once, right? Like you can go skiing once and you might make it down the hill and you might not break every bone in your body, but are you going to be that great at it? Probably not.
Right.
Can you learn to ride a bike? Yeah, you can learn to ride a bike relatively quickly, but are you going to be good at it? Right. And I think that that's sort of the exposure that people have gotten throughout their life, is they've sort of been exposed on different degrees to being emotionally aware or self-aware.
Yeah.
But then to really respond to it takes, I love what you said, that commitment. Like, it's a practice and it's a commitment, and it's choosing to do it, not just every other day, but to choosing to
Yeah.
do it a lot, and then being able to look at what's
Yeah.
going on around me and people around me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you have to learn to do it when the stakes are high, even, right? Like, it's one thing to go into a therapy office and it's nice and you got a mediator and it's calm and you're both on the same page, on the same goal. Somebody's taking care of your kids, right? You don't have to think about bills. It's one thing to do that in a nice comfortable setting, but then the majority of the work is going to be done outside of that nice comfortable setting, when your kids are pulling on you, when you got to take care of the house, when there's bills to be paid, you're dealing with your own heavy set of emotions. That's when the stakes are high. So you have to be learning to do these things on the fly in real time when the stakes are high and you're not in the best emotional state to be dealing with emotions, ironically.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And so it's just like, as you were talking, those spinning plates is what came to my mind. So that's what I was
Yeah.
imagining in my head, like those
Yeah.
spinning plates. And if that plate falls, right, how do I be emotionally intelligent? How do I be emotionally aware in
Yeah.
that moment when I'm feeling that stress? And none of these plates really can fall. Right? Like,
Yeah.
or at least there's pretty significant consequences if they do fall. And so I think it's a balance, it's a game, it's a continual process, and it's continual learning for
Yeah.
sure.
Absolutely.
As far as like self-regulation goes and like being able to self-regulate, again, is there any like practices or anything that you encourage clients or things to do to kind of self-regulate in the moment, right? They're noticing the plates are spinning and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't let these spin, or I can't let these stop spinning, I can't let these fall. Any in particular like practices that you like to teach clients about anxiety or trauma coming up or things like that, that can really help them maybe be even more emotionally intelligent in those moments and start to self-regulate?
Yeah, absolutely. My favorite one is it's the simplest one. It's so simple in some ways that it's ridiculous. And sometimes people don't even take it seriously and don't do it because it's so simple. Whereas if I told them, go climb that mountain and you'll be well emotionally regulated, they might do it. But this one they dismiss. Honestly, what I tell people, in fact, I dumb it down on purpose so that people will do it in the heat of the moment when the plates are in the air and the stakes are high. I tell people, you want to take a deep breath, which is as cliche as it gets. But I say, look, it's not just a deep breath. You need to do something with it to change your physiology, your neurology, change what's happening here and here. And the way you do that, it's not just a willy-nilly deep breath. What you want to do is make sure that deep breath goes into your gut, into your stomach, and then make sure you're just taking your sweet time on the out breath. You're just breathing out nice and easy, definitely breathing out for longer than what you breathe in. And it's so simple, but I mean, it's science-based, it's physiology. When you breathe in that way, you're hitting certain points, you're touching the brakes on the fight or flight mechanism, and that has a little bit of a soothing effect. It brings your heart rate down just a bit, can slow your blood, obviously. It can take you out of those blinders, the I'm right, you're wrong, I have to survive almost at any cost, can kind of widen those just a bit and give you enough space and enough of a reset that you can remember, okay, this isn't the only moment that exists. I do also need to think about half an hour from now when I'm paying the consequences of how I treat my spouse right now or how I treat my kids, right? It
Yeah.
gives you that little window in which you can kind of say, okay, what would an emotionally intelligent person do? Or what did Chelsea tell me that I needed to do in these situations? And you can stop and process some of your own stuff. Then you can process some of what your spouse might be going through as a result, and then you can decide with this much more of the thinking brain and this much less of the emotional brain. Okay, here's what my feelings are telling me to do in this situation, but here's what I probably should do in this situation. So
Yeah.
long story short, that good breath.
Yeah, that lengthening the fuse, right? So like that fuse
Yeah.
goes is really short, and that little deep breath, as simple as it is, it's amazing to me
Oh yeah.
how many people and people don't realize that they're like holding their breath, or that they're not breathing, or that their breathing has changed. And so it's
Uh-huh.
even just the little awareness of that, and so getting in those moments and saying, okay, I need a breath here. And taking in those breaths, and it really, like, I see it just like lengthening the fuse, right? The time
Yeah.
bomb, you give it a little more space
Yeah.
before the time bomb
Yeah.
explodes.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's a key point too, is what happens when I tell people, look, you need to breathe this way. Suddenly they're like, oh man, I just realized I hold my breath a
Yeah,
lot. And if you want to put yourself further into fight or flight and get sucked further into that emotion, hold your breath,
yep,
right? Your body goes into distress and it's like, oh, I'm going to lash out. I need to fight whatever's causing me distress. So you're right. Just the simple breathing in those certain ways into the gut and then long out breath, just doing it that way lengthens the fuse.
yep. Lengthens the fuse, gets more oxygen flow to that blood, turns on our
Yeah,
thinking brain. There,
yeah,
as Justin mentioned this, but there are physiologically and neurology, like there are a lot of huge benefits from breathing. Well, I've talked about them in other podcasts. So if that's something specifically that you're looking for, go back and look at some of those other podcasts. But mindful breaths and taking those big breaths, those are just tools that help you really self-regulate, particularly like right in the moment. So I love that example of just regulation, self-regulation right in those moments when you're at wit's end and what do I do? Taking a deep breath is so simple yet so key. So key.
yeah. And self-regulation is a huge key component to emotional intelligence.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I get, like, I often see people then can't regulate themselves, and they don't know what they need, and then they turn to their spouse or their partner, and they're basically like throw up all over them, right? Maybe not physically throw up all over them, but it's just this, like, they end up criticizing, they end up just demanding, they end up tearing them apart, and
Yeah.
they then become, and it typically has nothing to do with their spouse. And oftentimes their spouse or their partner is completely blindsided by it, like, what the heck, where is this coming from? I don't know how to respond.
Yeah.
And so if you do have a partner that is like that, right, that isn't able to regulate, are there any suggestions that you would have as that partner that is maybe feeling that attack, feeling that burden of them, maybe not knowing or being self-regulated, their partner being that? What are some things that that partner could do to help them become more aware, or that their partner become more aware of what they're doing in the moment?
Yeah, sure, sure. Yeah, you mean from the perspective of the partner who's getting attacked, who's having
Yeah,
everything brought up in the closet? Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's another $1 million questions, many different answers to that one. One of my favorites is I tell people a lot of the best work that you do, especially in terms of emotional intelligence, is before something bad happens and after something bad happens. So, like, you brief before a battle and then you debrief after the battle.
mhm,
So, what you do is you wait until it's calm, right? And probably kids are in bed, things are put away, and there's not a whole lot of emotion going on. And then you say, okay, well, now that the emotional brain is appropriately here where it should be, logical brain is appropriately here where it should be, let's talk about kind of what happens to you when these things happen. What are you thinking? What are you feeling in different places of your body? Clearly there's a lot you need to talk about. Let's talk about it now when things are calm, right before the next battle. You're not going to get a whole lot of productive activity during the battle. Talk about some of it before. And more to your point, you say, okay, now that things are calm, we're not right in the middle of an open conflict. What can I do to help you the next time this happens? Right. So when you start bringing all these things out of the closet, I don't know what to do. Tell me right now what I can do then. Do you want me to do this, do that? How can I help? How can I avoid escalating it? You're you're more first of all, it asks the person directly, hey, what do you need from me in those moments? And you're more likely to get a good solid, less emotional answer before the battle or after the battle, not so much during the battle itself.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that analogy of the battle because just like we said, like that flight, fight, freeze response comes on. I'm just trying to survive. The blinders get on. I get stuck.
Yep.
And talking about what it is that you need right in that moment, it's like, I don't know. I just need out. I just need a weight. Like I need this pain. I need this to just stop. And so oftentimes, again, like people are not thinking logically, emotionally, like everything is on the high end. And so if we can, I love your analogy of pre-brief, like do pre-planning the battle, right? And then the debrief after. And I think that's a great way people can really show up for their partner in helping them figure out how to navigate these spots differently. We're all going to lose it at times, but that debrief after of, okay, how do we do this different? What do you need? What would have been helpful for me to show up for you, do differently?
Yeah.
Um, those are really important conversations that I definitely see people not having
Not
very
having,
often.
no, people barrel straight into a fight and they'll do it over and over again. But sometimes you're like, hey, talk about these things beforehand. Definitely talk about them after. They're like, nah, we didn't do it. I'm sorry, we got busy.
Yeah, we got busy, life got busy, which is
Life
fair. I
happened.
mean, life is always going to get
Yeah,
busy,
man.
but again, if you
Right.
want to, this is where things get crazy, right? If you want things to be different, you've got to do things different. And if you don't want things to be different, I can pretty much tell you exactly how your next fight is going to go
Yeah.
without you even having to go into that fight because we weren't doing anything different even in between, right? And we may still, you're still going to show up, you're still going to get frustrated, you're still going to get those things, and that fuse is still going to get lit. But how do we really do it different? I think that's a fantastic example of just how to really do it different and how to really foster that emotional intelligence in your partner, in yourself, and in your relationship, right? Like how do we do it different in our relationship? Really
Yeah.
example.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
is. I think again, if, whether people are struggling with trauma, whether they're struggling with anxiety, depression, any other things, like the emotional intelligence piece works across the board, right? Whether whatever, however they're experiencing life, being able to really just show up and honor this is what's going on for me right now, and be aware of it in the moment can be totally key to changing a lot of things in life. Yeah.
Yeah, it can be immensely influential and immensely powerful to get a greater handle on those things specifically. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely see it helping all around. I mean, raising the emotional intelligence of yourself can definitely help with all things mental health, management of mental health, and just being more aware of life in general and living a slightly more happier life. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed.
Well,
100%.
it's a fast one today. It's a quick one today. We didn't take too long, but emotional intelligence is really important. We'll have more on it in upcoming podcasts, so check it out soon. And thanks for listening to the Puzzle of Us podcast. I'm your host, Chelsea Petersen, with special guest Justin Gordon today. Justin, I appreciate you joining me today, and
Yeah, absolutely.
we'll hopefully have you soon.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll be here.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Justin.
Thank you.